Welcome, strangers, to Talkumentary, the show where we watch documentaries and then get together and talk about them.
What's up, everybody? As the great philosopher Plato once said, music and rhythm find their way into the secret places of our soul. Human beings are energy. Energy is a wave. A wave is a pattern. A pattern is rhythm. The entire world around us is composed of rhythm. There is one role, one profession, a list of inspiring men and women who have taken it upon themselves to be the rhythm keepers, the ones who display these rhythms in the most intricate yet simple, complex yet beautiful ways. I am, of course, talking about the drummer. So allow yourselves the pleasure of sitting back and listening to the beat of another episode of Talkumentary. My name's Jeff. I have the pleasure of keeping the tempo of tonight's episode along with the hi-hat King James himself.
Hey, hey.
The big bass drum himself, Brice Necker. What up? Boom, boom. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us this evening. He is a professional drummer, producer, and the owner of Empty House Studio in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He has drummed for over 1,500 different projects and produced and mixed over 200 records. At least this is what his website says. And friends, let me tell you about his real claim to fame here. The one feather in his cap that he gets to brag about more often than anything else, he had the pleasure of teaching me how to play the drums over 25 years ago. Here to share his love and knowledge of drumming, let me introduce my former sensei, Matthew Tobias. What's up, Matt?
Hey, I'm not going to make any drum sounds. And if you come to Albuquerque, like one side of the wall of the studio on the outside is painted like formerly Jeff Kolaski's teacher.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They stop and they take pictures as they're rolling by.
Yeah, it's on the Breaking Bad tour.
Yeah. Yep. It's good to see you again, man. It's been a very long time since we've talked.
You too, man.
I like social media for the reasons that we can kind of stay connected in that way. But we'll get into a little bit about the role you played in my life and sort of setting me on the trajectory. So get ready for a little bit of compliments here. But thank you so much for doing this episode with us. Yeah.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Thank you. All right. Tonight, we strapped ourselves into a rotating drum cage and we soloed our way through an 81-minute documentary from 2021 titled Count Me In.
Playing the drums is fun.
I can play my drums all day, all night, and I love it. You know, I don't know if that's a false. I'm not really sure. I've gotten into a little bit of trouble with that, you know, over the years.
I'm from North London. I didn't grow up with anything really, apart from just this mad sort of like obsession and love.
The best thing about being a drummer is I saw the world doing the job I love. You can't get better than that.
It's the best feeling in the world. I'm controlling the way this crowd is moving. It's just me and 80,000 people in a stadium, and this is the coolest fucking time of my life.
If the guitar plug goes out during a raid show, it'll be a bummer. But if the kick drum pedal breaks, that's a problem. You got 100,000 people like, oh, now what, you know?
I don't know what my life would be without drums. Everything that has come along with me playing drums has been so rewarding that I would never trade any of it.
I hope that that's how I go out, man. Just, you know. Wait, I'm not dead yet. Wait, I've come back to life.
Count Me In is a personal visit with several of music's most well-renowned drummers to discuss, plain and simple, their love and appreciation for drumming and the human connection that comes along with it. This was directed by Mark Lowe, produced by John Giwa Amu and Mark Lowe. This film was a Great Point, Red and Black Films, and Asylum Giant production. We streamed it on Netflix. Count Me In does not register on Rotten Tomatoes due to the low amount of reviews thus far. So you'll just have to rely on the official documentary rating we give you later on to know how good or not good this documentary is. We'll have a link with all that in the show notes. Let's get into it. We are going to spoil the twists and turns of this documentary for you, so make sure you check it out. Or, there really is no spoilers here. Gentlemen, I think this documentary was by drummers for drummers kind of documentary. I really enjoyed the documentary. But I am also a drummer, so I'm interested to, Brice, I know you've dabbled just a little bit into the drum world, waking up your roommates and whatnot with your drum set.
Oh, yeah.
James, how about you? You told me you did bongos or something one time?
Congos.
Oh, congos.
Congos, which are drums. Just let everybody know.
Oh, yeah. Let everyone know.
Just in case.
What's the difference between a bongo and a congo?
Well, I don't know.
Matt?
So...
Might be shorter.
Bongos are the little guys that are up on a stand. Congas are the long things that usually rest all the way on the floor. Okay. The Congo is a region in Africa.
I was just about to say that. I just about to say Congos might be in Africa.
But whatever.
That's awesome. But who's counting?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, that's the official word is Congas.
Yeah.
Yeah, congas. Yep.
Congas. All right.
Yep.
Just like a conga line.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. Let's talk about why we chose to watch Count Me In this week. I chose this one, plain and simple. I'm a drummer. I wanted to watch something about drumming. I reached out to Matthew, who clearly also likes drumming. And since his path directly impacted my own life path, I figured this one would be a good opportunity to get into one of the best things that has ever happened to me, which is drums. Had any of you guys seen or heard of this before? Matthew, had you seen this one before I talked to you about it?
Yep. I watched it the week it came out.
Oh, yeah? So were you waiting for it?
Pardon?
Were you waiting for it? Were you...
I mean, I wasn't waiting, but I think when Netflix sent me the email saying it was out, I was like, yeah, cool. That's a Tuesday night. We'll watch that.
Yep. Just before we get into it too far, what did you think when you first watched it without looking at it under the documentary microscope?
Sure. So I watched it with my wife, who is at the same time way more gracious than me and also way more forthright.
Okay.
And we both went, but it was really great that Netflix was pimping a thing about drums, right? So we left it at face value and went, you know what? That was awesome.
That was cool. Yep. Brice, James, what do you guys think?
I hadn't heard about it or anything until now, but it was a fun ride.
Yeah. James?
I think it was pretty good myself because I got to look up, started doing a small amount of research and found out that there's more to drumming than just hitting drums. There's techniques and different moves and different beats and sounds and rhythms and everything.
Yeah. So I want to geek out just a little bit with Matthew for a bit and talk about drums. Matt, you used to play. I met you because you played for the church that I was going to school at back then, called Trinity Christian Schools. Now it's called Lifegate or something. for a time, it seemed like anytime there were drums happening or anything going on at church at all, you could almost guarantee that if it sounded good, that Matthew Tobias was behind the set. So do you remember, do you remember all those times back then, 25 years ago? I mean,
sure.
I know you're starting to lose your memory and all that after all these years.
Yeah. You're good. I do. And, we've all walked whatever paths we've walked.
Yeah.
Probably during that time, a guy named Sean Keith was kind of at the helm of the music thing.
Yeah.
And he and I actually went to college together, and he was a percussion performance major at the same college that I was.
Yeah.
Great drummer, unbelievably great feel. So when he was in charge of music in Omaha, I found it very easy to connect with him.
Yeah.
Because he was a drummer. Like, I knew him as a drummer. I didn't know him as a music leader guy in a church.
Because he was doing guitar and vocals and stuff, right?
Yeah. But the feel was there, and you could trust his upstrokes on an acoustic guitar, and it was going to feel really great. So that era, largely was defined for me by my relationship with Sean
and getting to play with him. Yeah.
Pardon?
And getting to play with him and
and just how easy it was because he came to it as a drummer.
Yeah.
And so there was a bunch of common ground and a bunch of things we didn't need to say to each other.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And that's not always the case. So
yeah,
again, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was really good that it felt really good because I knew he was coming to it as a guy. When I met him, he was holding drumsticks, not a guitar pick.
Yeah. I remember back in those times you brought kind of a style and now, this was me as an 11-year-old kid, so you're going to have a little bit of a different, whether it was you and Sean, but you brought a style to drums that none of the other, I hate to say older drummers just didn't have at the church. So when you played, people could just tell that you were into it, that you loved it. You get that drummer face, that going, that you can tell you're just in that zone and feeling it. And we saw a lot of that in this documentary, when you just get into it and into the song that and love, and you're kind of able to riff on it a little bit, but you also are playing what you've played a million times. You just get into that zone. But you were pretty influential to a young 11-year-old kid, man, who just really wanted to sit behind the drums and make them sound good. I remember, a couple of my friends had gotten into playing music in band and things, and I was like, no, I don't really want to be in band. I want to be in a band. I want to play with other musicians,
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So how long have you been playing drums?
About 47 years.
Okay, and how old are you?
A little more than 47 years.
Okay, yeah. So so you've been playing forever. Your dad played, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Is that kind of what got you into that?
Yeah. So I grew up in a home where I knew that both of my parents. I started drumming on my 4th birthday.
Okay.
My birthday present was my dad pulling the blanket off of his drums in the basement, and here we go.
Cool.
I grew up hitting the pots and pans and doing all the stuff that you do, unaware that my parents were musicians. And then from my 4th birthday on, at first drums were I think I identify with this because I've been banging on stuff, but it was also a really great way for me to hang with my dad.
Yep.
And we had lessons every Saturday morning in the basement and, yada, yada, yada. And then I think by the time I was 11 or so, I was saying to my folks, man, I think this is what I'm going to do. For Halloween, can I dress up like a drummer?
They're like, aren't you already dressed up like a drummer?
Yeah, right. Yeah, jeans and a T-shirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you're me, you're wearing, gym shorts and no shoes or socks.
Sure. Yeah.
So you've played with a bunch of different groups, but mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, as a studio or a tour drummer. Is that kind of right?
Sure. So for most of the maybe late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing Nashville-based travel, bunch of CCM stuff, bunch of country stuff.
Yep.
And then that kind of turned in, sort of organically turned into session work. So moving from playing on a stage to playing in the studio, and quickly found that my love is the studio, and my love is that moment when it's happening and we don't know what the song is, but we're going to find it right now.
Oh,
like that's
cool.
a really precious, really amazing space to be in when you're with the right people.
Right.
And then that kind of changed my course. And today my hope is that I'm working on stuff with people in my space here in Albuquerque where we're finding it and we're making your thing happen. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So do you record full bands, right? You're doing everything, not just drums, correct?
Sure. So I kind of split my time between, I spend probably a third of my time still just drumming on things that come to me from wherever, where all they need me to do is drum.
Yeah.
And I send it back to them and, they finish it wherever they are. And then I produce maybe 15 to 20 full projects here at my place in Albuquerque, where everything happens here, whether I'm drumming or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. You've been kind of a what I would consider a card holding member of certain bands, correct? Like
sure.
Not just either a studio or tour drummer, but you've been what you care to name drop any of those bands?
I mean, I don't think anybody where I was like the guy is still doing anything meaningful. I say that carefully.
Yeah. As you're thinking about the different projects, hoping that they're not listening to us going, Matt, you motherfucker.
Yeah, right. It's no, but I think I've really found my joy in myself and my stride and my thing in the studio, probably as a producer, more than as a drummer. There's a band called Sleep that, if you're in the right circles, is a big thing. Help them do some things on a couple of records lately.
Sleep like the aren't they like a stoner rock band or something?
They are, yeah. So
Third Man, they're pretty sweet.
Third Man just released the 20-year box set of their record Dope Smoker. I did a bunch
stoner
of work.
rock is a pretty good way to describe them, I would guess.
Sure, yeah, of course. Roll a fatty and see at the end. All
right.
I did a bunch of work on the 20-year box set Third Man released of a record they did called, surprise, surprise, Dope Smoker.
So do you got to be like high to listen to these people? Does it sound better?
Their bass player lives here in town. And we're just wrapping up. Like, I spent all day today trying to wrap up a record by a band called Ohm.
Okay.
That Al Cisneros, who's the bass player in Sleep, is the bass player in Ohm. Their new record will come out sometime later this year, which is fantastic.
Cool.
So I think these days I've embraced when I feel like a drummer's really doing his thing or her thing. They're in the back row, and it's I know they're there, but I know that the songs are awesome.
Yeah.
More than I know that the drummer is there.
Yep.
So I love that part of my life now.
That's cool.
I want to just be helping rather than be needing to be known by anybody.
Fair enough. But the real question is, do you remember Dues On Machine?
I do.
When's the last time you heard that name?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
So my very first AOL screen name when I was like 11 or 12 was Dues On M, And I remember
Nice.
telling you that, like as a kid, thinking that, like, oh, you were going to be so stoked. And you were like, oh, that's cool. Probably thinking, who is this kid? Like, you're weird, dude.
I'm so sorry. It's very cool that you did that.
Duzon Machine was a band that Matt used to be in or play with. So, all right. So that's enough geeking out about back in the day and all that stuff. Let's get into some of our favorite or least favorite details about Count Me In. First, here's a quick synopsis. Count Me In is an exhilarating celebration of the art of rock drumming, featuring some of the best drummers ever to have graced the drum kit in that genre. We are taken on an uplifting journey through some of the most iconic music ever created, focusing on the women and men with the sticks, their passions, culture, and awe-inspiring energy. From heartbeat to backbeat, caveman to techno rave man, rhythm has driven our world for centuries. We listen to a cast of drummers express the joy and exhilaration of a life dedicated to driving the beat. In their own words, we share the passion that has taken them from banging on pots and pans as kids to playing on some of the world's biggest stages. You can have rhythm without music, but you can't have music without rhythm. So that is a little bit of a synopsis. I really appreciated that this film was focused on drummers in bands and the interaction between the drummer, the other bandmates, and the crowd. That was something that really stood out to me in this. So I'm interested in getting into your guys' opinion of this. But, before we get into that, I think I want to back up just a little bit. What did you guys told me you thought this was a pretty cool documentary, Brice, James. What stood out to you, James, about the Count Me In documentary? Talk about a few things that stood out to you.
Well, a couple things that stood out to me, like always. I like jazz.
Yep.
I like blues. And a lot of them complimented, like, the jazz players, their rhythm, their beats, and a lot of them compliment the blues and how they took a lot of that and integrated it in. I learned that a lady named Cindy Blackman. She started off as a jazz player, and she moved from jazz straight into rock and played in like the rock arena and stuff like that. And she became famous that she's been playing. I don't know her music, but that's what this had me do a lot of studying.
She played or plays for, I think, Lenny Kravitz and Carlos Santana. Mm-hmm. I think she may have married Santana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
She's Santana's wife.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I agree, James. I think that, you get into some of those older, bluesy or jazzy band music, that's where it all came from, especially in this kind of genre that they were focusing on in this documentary, where it's sort of, you can see in a lot of the playing where they took their influence from some of those styles. Brice, do you feel like this was a documentary that a non-drummer could enjoy?
Yeah, I do think so. Yeah.
Yeah. What about it did you like?
Well, I like that they kind of made it for non-drummers to try to get hyped about drummers and drumming.
Okay.
Because like the first like opening scene is just this slow like hum, and then it goes directly into someone talking about how much they love drumming.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have all these drummers, and then they have all these stories of other famous drummers, and it gets you hyped up about drumming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew, what do you think as far as like going into this, having played drums for 47 years, do you think, clearly you're going to have a different opinion or take or feel about this documentary than someone who does not play drums. Do you feel like talk to me about how different you think that might be going into that with the knowledge and the experience that you have in that world versus if you were watching this as, maybe James or Brice who don't have, and myself who don't have the same level of experience that you do in this world.
Sure. So a few things. It's a documentary about drums. So cool.
It's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. I think I could relate to the, Christmas morning unboxing the drums. You're moving from pots and pans to a crappy drum set that your folks got you, and you're going through the heads in 2 weeks because they're cheap, and like that visceral 6-year-old thing or whatever.
Yep.
Like amen. I could relate to that. I literally remember my dad pulling the blanket off the drums in the basement on my 4th birthday. Like he was a magician and there was a thing. And so all that stuff was like super, super good. It didn't move very far past the visceral early reaction of drummer kid thing. I didn't think.
Okay.
I don't know how deep I should go about
keep
it.
Going. Yeah, no, it's an open discussion, whatever you feel like.
I loved that half the drummers were female.
Yeah.
And there was no sense of like, bless their hearts, we're going to include some females.
Yeah.
It was, we're going to include these people because they're all amazing drummers.
Right.
Full stop, right?
Yep.
And that's the discussion. That's what the discussion should be.
Mm-hmm.
If Samantha Maloney was still touring with Motley Crue, they would not be playing to pre-recorded drum tracks.
Right.
And so I loved that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love that it didn't move much beyond sort of the visceral.
Yeah.
I grew up playing on pots and pans before I knew my dad was a drummer.
Right.
But then as soon as we got into drumming, that kicked into a different thing.
Yeah.
And I loved when Abe Laboriel Jr., the guy who plays for, he's played for everybody, but he's known for playing for Paul McCartney
and
for
Sting,
the last 25
right?
years. He's played for Sting.
Yeah.
I've got probably 75 records that he's drummed on.
Yeah.
His dad, Abe Laboriel Sr., is an amazing bass player. I loved when he talked about, my dad would show me a groove.
Yeah.
And then I would start to play it, and then he would go start to play bass. Like that was the only little glimpse into
the
drums should be part of another thing,
right?
Or a bigger thing.
Yep.
And I love it. I love the visceral. There are times when my hair stands up, and I don't know why, but I'm playing drums, so it's all good.
Yeah.
I would have loved a little bit more like the song matters more than the drums.
Yeah.
And Jeff, man, you came to my basement.
Yep.
So how many times do we talk about don't play drums on songs, play songs on drums?
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I would love for there to have been more of that.
For sure.
But, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah. And I think the something that what you're saying is so important. And part of the thing that, I agree. They didn't really get into much about it. It was just a lot of I felt like there was a repetition of, I just love the energy of playing the drums. I just love the energy of being up there, and the crowd goes wild, and we're going, and there was just a lot of, which is true. But, some of my favorite experiences playing the drums have been in my basement with 3 of my friends, and I can't hear for the next 2 days because my ears are ringing, like those are the things that, and I do, like I said, I do appreciate that this was focused on this film focused on drummers in bands and the interaction between the drummer and some of their other bandmates and the crowd, and that I'm not really that interested, nor have I ever been that interested in solo drumming.
Sure.
Matt, I think you were actually the first person who took me to my one and only solo drum clinic. Do you remember that? I think we went and saw Terry Bozzio.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it was me and you and your dad actually.
Yep.
Yep. I remember being really impressed, but actually getting kind of bored because I'm like, So in solo drumming, you're not doing a lot of like grooves. You're not doing a lot of like just straight, rhythm. You're doing a lot of on the cymbals. You've got 5,000 cymbals, 150 toms, and you're playing on all this, and it's really cool and it's technically impressive, but I don't really connect to that as much. And I don't know how you feel, Matt. James, you had something to add to that.
So when you said that, I was because this had me look up in a different way. I went a different way when I watched the documentary. Mm-hmm. I looked up like what was the original use of drums. I went to like what is the greatest drum player, but when you said solo, now I was watching this today. Now that's nothing. It made me start watching drummers.
So you're telling me you're watching that today, that you only did one thing today, and that was work. So we're watching this boy.
Just have to,
I'm just messing with you. Go ahead.
Scratch that.
Go ahead.
Well, John Bonham. That's it, right?
Oh, John Bon Jovi?
No, not Bon Jovi. I've been messing that up all this time, but it's John Bonham. John
Bonham, yeah.
Bonham. Henry Bonham, I think that's his name is. What do you guys think about his solo that he did with Led Zeppelin at the Royal Albert Hall?
Matt, do you have opinions on John Bonham?
Sure, yeah, I do. So, one thing that I feel like the documentary did do pretty well was talk about how the straight eight, Ian Pace from Deep Purple, some of his interviews talked about the transition from the swung triplet feel of blues and jazz through to the straight eighth of what we know as kind of rock and roll, whatever.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Bonham, and then, even Ian Pace, I didn't feel like they gave him his due as a player.
No.
Although he said some really meaningful things.
Right.
Bonham was the first guy that took the triplet, which is what jazz is based on,
right,
da 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 da, and moved it into an eighth note based scenario. He was the first guy that made that feel really good and really big.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
His solos are amazing, but his play, like my ringtone, if you guys call me right now, my ringtone is John Bonham's Groove to Fool in the Rain. Yeah. Which is my favorite Led Zeppelin song off my least favorite Led Zeppelin record, In Through the Outdoor. They were done by then.
Yeah.
He brought a weight and a heaviness.
Yeah.
As the triplet crossed over to the straight eighth.
Yep.
And you can talk about his solos, but man, just listen to him on any tune, Black Dog. Mm. And that, he carves out a groove wide enough for a few semis to fit through. And that's amazing.
Yeah. And I
on Moby Dick. When I saw him play that drum, I said, this dude has congas, and then he stopped playing with the sticks and played the drums with his hands.
Yeah.
And I like, wow, this dude is a beast.
Yeah.
It was a beast. I mean, and then he got on the congas. I said, yeah, I wish I had me some right now. So, and that's when I know that the drummers, when they hear drumming and they just join in, how they get that feeling.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, finish up.
Well, because when I played the congas, we play at church. And I used to play for like maybe 2 hours straight. And you feel it. Now, when somebody else joins in with other ones, then y'all match your beat with the rhythm and keep going forward. No one stops until you're exhausted or tired or fall out or something, and you get that love feeling for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the groove.
For sure. And I think, to kind of go back, I think to the original thought of, solo drumming, I think there's a place for it. There's a some people, I mean, who am I to tell someone they can't enjoy doing that? I just have never, ever connected with that. To me, drumming was never about being the center of attention. It was never about being the but being arguably the most crucial part of the show, of the of the song. And there's just something so, and I don't know, and I'm looking to the guys in the room here about, like, there's just something that I wonder if you can truly understand if you're not there, if you're not doing it. Is it as appealing to people as it always has been to me, like to want to be the driving force behind something? I mean, I feel I literally, and maybe I'm looking too into this, but from the time I was 11 or 12 when I started playing drums, like I almost feel like that molded my trajectory in life, because I immediately wanted to start playing music with my neighbors who were in bands, and started making some of the worst music with my friends. But who cares? Because it was so much fun, and then that turned into, if you want to get super psychological about it, I'm the type of guy, I operate a facility, right, at a museum. So I'm not out front. I'm in the background, but I'm making sure that the whole building runs, right? That's my literal career path. So you can make connections to the type of person, I think, who wants to be in that role to keep the heartbeat of the song or going, and not necessarily need to be the person standing at the top of the hill saying, with the microphone and being the one that people are screaming over, even though everyone knows that everyone likes the drummer best anyway.
Right. Well, I think that's true, but I got a question for you, Matthew. What Jeff was saying is cool, but he says
what Jeff was saying was cool, but
no, I'm not saying it's not cool. I'm just saying I was trying to picture it together, but listening to this, drums can drums be like the kicker, like you said? The music plays, but when the drums come in, then the music kicks up a beat, because the drums actually make the music, even though they're the background. Now, my question is, can drums be like the beginner and also the ending, make a sound of the ending of a music?
I think drums can do whatever you need them to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's the thing. My mom told me a long time ago, songs are more important than your involvement with them. And that is huge. And so, like, for me today, and I hope I answer your question, for me today, when I get a project that I got to drum on, whatever, cool, I listen to the song. It starts with picking out the right drums for where it seems like the song is headed. And then the right drums kind of help dictate the right parts to play and the right shape. But for me, it's, if the drums weren't there, the song couldn't happen. But you'd be totally fine if you never realized the drums were there.
Right.
They're just there to get you from A to B. And if I have a critique of the documentary, and you can only go so far in a 90-minute documentary,
right?
It's that the documentary kind of stopped at the visceral, like, this is really exciting. Well, sometimes drums aren't exciting. Like, sometimes drums are sad.
Yep.
Sometimes drums are mournful.
Right.
And so how do you help a listener feel loss if all you know is that drums are exciting?
Right.
Right. Well, like, sometimes drums can make you feel pain and can make you feel loss. Right. And I love that notion. And of course, if there were 50 drum documentaries on Netflix, I would have critiques of all of them.
Sure.
But, like, getting into the thing, what is this artist trying to say with this song?
Right.
How do I help that happen?
Yeah, this was almost a recruitment video for a drummer. Like, get people into drumming, which is cool. But to your point, Matt, I think just as important as drums are, and hopefully this speaks to what James was asking too, the lack of drums in songs or the certain parts of songs is just as important or just as meaningful as having the drums. Sometimes the most powerful part of the song is the few measures where the drummer completely stops. Even like 0, not even 4 on the floor, not even, not even anything. It's just, it completely drops off. I mean, it's songwriting, right? Mm-hmm. Brice, you've played in bands before. Yeah. And that to me has always been my favorite part. I can play drums in my basement with my headphones on, whatever, as much as I want. But when there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people down in your basement and you're putting ideas together, that's huge. That can just make you, I'm almost getting goosebumps, like thinking about times where I've made songs where hindsight, it probably wasn't that cool, but in the moment that's the best part.
Well, it's an art form, and it's like painting on a canvas. Like you can have these paintings that are super busy and detailed, but it's the neutral space that's gonna really catch your eye. And it's just the same as writing a song or drumming. Like everything has emphasis, and it gives a different tone for what you're seeing or what you're hearing.
No, and you're absolutely right. You can be well said, Brice.
That's right.
Just like the painter or the tattooer or something, just because you're packing a ton of paint or a ton of ink or a ton of beats or a ton of guitar solos or a ton of vocal parts into a song doesn't make it a great song. You might have 4 of the most talented musicians in the world who can't play together, or who all want to take the stage, or who all want to, I guess own that part.
Kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I believe that's called jazz.
Oh, it's called jazz. Yeah, where everyone gets a turn to solo, and everyone cheers during that spot. Matt, you probably deal with that quite a bit in the recording studio. I would imagine, where you kind of see where in the producing role, I guess, where you have to probably tell people, like, guys, you can't all be the star of this this song, because it needs some room to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I'm producing, I'm a huge fan of pre-production, which is like, me being in the space, in the band space with them. What do you guys sound like when you practice every Tuesday night? Whatever.
Yeah.
What is this trying to say? What is every moment trying to evoke from me, the listener? And any barriers to me getting to that spot, we want to eliminate. Now, it's not science, it's art. So you can't guarantee how everybody's going to hear something. Because we all bring our own filters and our own experiences to paintings or art or, any expression that is somewhat subjective. But I want to make sure that a band is all pointing, if a song is about loss, if a song is about joy, if a song is about anger, we all have to point toward that thing so that we help the listener along. And, the listener is free to make their own decisions, but we help them along in that journey.
Right.
I ran home today for late lunch and sat on my couch and watched a couple Refused live videos with my son on the couch.
Nice.
And that's such a visceral, anti-capitalist, amazing statement. And there's a lot of math going on in the music.
Yep.
But what you feel mostly is that Wall Street sucks.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
Right.
And like, that's the thing. If the band can get to that, if the drummer can get to the notes that I play and the notes that I choose not to play, help the listener get to Wall Street sucks, then mission accomplished.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And it doesn't matter the density or the lack of density. A lot of the early jazz stuff was about the condition of oppressed people in the South.
Right.
And the angst and the you know, the in the post-bop movement of the 60s was not about math. It was about
getting an emotion across.
Yeah. Basically,
you know,
the mood.
So to me, that's the beginning and ending. And the drummer and every other instrumentalist has to be willing to play or not play all the stuff. Not to manipulate the listener, because that gets into weird like propaganda.
Yeah.
But like to be honest about the journey that we're on so that you can go on it with us.
And trying to take you along with us on that journey. Yeah. And
sorry, I feel like we haven't talked about the documentary for a second.
Hey, welcome to Talkumentary, because
what I thought was interesting was all the drummers at the end, you know, when they all set up in the room and kind of play their drum solos, which I just think is terrible.
Me too.
All of those drummers, that's not who they are. All of those drummers are band drummers.
Yep.
They're song drummers. You know, I felt like that last scene where they're
that was something that they put together for this documentary to try to make
they
it
said,
make it a big climax.
Because it's a cool way to end.
Yep, I think it fell short for me. I want to go back. So this kind of touches on something you mentioned just probably now 20 minutes ago, but you know, at one point, Jess Bowen, who drums for the Somerset, she was going drum shopping at Drum Doctor.
Yep.
So you spoke to a little bit, Matthew, that you know you find the right drum, right?
Yep.
And I know, like, I looked at your website, and I know that you've been forever been a big proponent of, you know, do the drums the right way and have the right drums for the sound you're wanting and all that. It's crazy to me that drums can really affect the sound, the feel, and all that. The drums that you play or that are being played. I will admit that has been a weakness of mine since day one. I just do not understand. I don't get it. I never find like joy in tuning my drums. I love a good sounding kit. I don't know what makes a good sounding kit. You know, like I want the cheat codes. I want the stuff. I want to put the piece of tape on top of the snare to make it as tight sounding or as loose or whatever it is as possible. You know, I don't know all the technical stuff, but Matt, this is your jam, right? I mean, you're, and I think that's what makes a good drum tech, a good drum producer, somebody who's good in a studio. You offer all sorts of drums, and it was crazy looking at, you know, in Drum Doctor going, this guy has all these kits. And I loved one thing that he said, that I've got vintage kits and the same ones that I was playing back, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, whatever it was, are the ones people are still renting now. So there's something good about those. You know, Matt, you came and helped me set up my first drum set. If we're talking about the Christmas, you know, I was told to sing Little Drummer Boy and walk downstairs, and I blew up in excitement and tears and everything because my drum set was sitting downstairs in a box that was bought at Sam's Club or whatever. You know, not a great kit, but you know what? It was pretty freaking sweet for a first kit at 14 years old. And, but Matt, and I know that I'm probably opening a can of worms here to ask you, you know, tell me the difference, but if you can do it in like as condensed as you can, like with drums, what's the difference? Like, is it size? Is it material? Is it the heads? Is it the tuning? Is it all of the above?
Yeah. So in the documentary, I love that they included Ross Garfield. I've played on a few of his kits and never had anything
that was the
but
Drum
joy.
Doctor?
Yeah, the Drum Doctor, Ross Garfield.
Yep.
He kind of pioneered the idea of drum cartage. And, you know, cartage is when like a company shows up to a studio or an event or, you know, the Grammys or whatever with drum sets that are going to fill all the needs of whatever you need. I wish they would have gone a little further into like why it's important what he does.
Yeah.
But he is a legend, and is unbelievably great. I think for me, I don't care what the thing is. Like, we can hit shelves, we can hit the floor, we can hit the wall. It doesn't matter. Does the sound make a meaningful sound
Right.
to the journey that the song is on?
Right.
I tend to think of things like bright and dark, long and short, furry versus crunchy, like whatever weird adjectives you can think to throw in.
Yeah.
But for me, it's really like,
I want a real fuzzy drum. Can you do a fuzzy drum?
Yeah, no, and I have clients that are like, hey, don't play any hi-hats on this record and make sure all the drums sound really pink. Like, I don't know what that means, but like we'll figure it out. So to me, it's like, what's the arc of the song emotionally?
Right.
And I think the kick drum and snare drum especially can really help
all day
define the emotional arc. And then, Jeff, I promise you, if we were in my drum room right now and I put you behind a 28-inch kick drum from the 50s and a snare drum from the 40s, there would only be a certain amount of things that you could play on that.
Right.
It would force you to play a certain way. So for me, that's sort of the thing. Like,
my last band, I was playing punk rock on a 26-inch bass drum.
Yeah,
which
that's not going to happen, right? The drums
I was
kind of
doing
become
it,
the blinders.
but it sucked.
Yeah. The drums become the blinders on what you can perform.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps the drummer play into the sound, just like a guitar player.
Yeah.
Put up the right delay or the right gain or the right overdrive setting. They're going to play into that sound,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to feel better because they're getting immediate feedback from the delay pedal or whatever.
Right.
Drums are not drums. Like, there's a bazillion different things, and it's not right or wrong.
Yep.
It's what's great for what we're doing right now. And that's what's the best thing.
Yeah. And being able to kind of hone into those sounds. And, I think the difference between, someone like you and someone like me is you have an idea of how what changes to make, what things to tweak, what things to mess with, where I'm kind of going, well, I bought this snare drum, so I got to make it sound the way that I want it to sound, or I just tighten it up all the way so it cracks really loud when I hit it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And also, like, you don't have to love what I love.
Right.
I don't have to love what you love.
Right.
Like, my middle stripe down the road can be totally different than your middle stripe down the road.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Who cares? It's art.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun, right?
Yep.
Both you guys, since y'all drummers and stuff, and that's what you do. What kind of drum is your favorite drum? Like, you got the snare drum, bass drums, and
that's an interesting question.
Those all types of drums. I learned that while looking at the Caribbean. They got the high tone metal drums. You got the awi. The awi is the drums you play like in Africa, West Africa, in Ghana, Benin. What do you guys like?
Well, I'll speak to that first. I can only speak to the drums that I've played, which are the drums that come in your typical 4 to 5 to 6 piece kit, right? And that has always changed, I think, depending on what I'm playing, what type of music I'm playing, or what I'm doing. I've always loved a punchy bass drum, especially if you're playing like metal or punk rock or something, that's going to vibrate your chest when you hear it. Whether you're doing a double kick or you're doing, just playing fast. But I don't think you ever can take away a good, powerful sounding snare drum. So to me, it's between the bass and the snare, which is why I agreed so hard when Matt said that those two, especially, your toms. Yeah, there are certain things that you may play a certain, song or certain whatever. But for me anyway, it always comes back to the big two, which is the snare and the bass. You could play a whole song with just those two. If you're playing fills or you're playing, things on your toms, then, that's cool. It adds a lot to the song. But you know, I've heard incredible performances on a guy that's got nothing but a hi-hat, a snare, and a bass drum on stage. And it sounds wonderful. So if you're asking me my favorite drum, I'm going to have a hard time answering between the bass drum and the snare drum. Matt?
Yeah, I'm going to, kick, snare, and ride cymbal.
Sure.
I think those are the three things that kind of dictate the overall color or trajectory or emotional vibe of a song. This, the song I sent you guys to play, you do not need a calculator to figure out what I'm doing. But there's kind of a primary layer where I tracked just a couple mics through some guitar pedals.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of freaked out and then played normal drums over the top. And like, it's kick, snare, hats and kick, snare, ride. And when I left school, like when I left college, I thought I would probably change the world playing very complicated music.
Yep.
And now I am quite glad to feed my family playing backbeats.
Yep.
On the right snare drum. You know?
That's a really cool way to look at that too. And I think there was to speak to that as a drummer coming up in, I was interested in punk and metal and rock and roll and whatnot. And those are the bands that I played in. And when we'd go play shows at, either at a bar or at a skate shop or something like that, and we're watching drummer, and I'm comparing myself to these other drummers who are maybe more technical than I am, or maybe are a little faster than I can play or something. And I remember that having, an effect on my self-confidence and all that. But as I started to mature and started, no, I'm going to play what feels right to me, and I'm going to play, and it became like, no, I'm not. If you want me to go play in a super technical band, I'm not the drummer for you, because I never connected with that. I never, for playing drums as long as I have been, I should be better than I am. In a lot of eyes, I should probably be technically better than I am. But you know what? I've enjoyed every band that I've played with. I've enjoyed it every time I'm behind them. And that's ultimately why I started playing drums. And I think it's important to know that, like, you don't have to be a technical drummer to be a good drummer. Some of my favorite bands, look at, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of, like, the Black Diamond Heavies. Like, they're an organ or a synth player and a drummer, and the drummer just kicks ass, but he's not super technical, which is great for what they're doing. So I love that.
And it goes, my mom's thing, the song is more important than your involvement with it.
Yep.
Because I'm old, I'm more inclined to, like, love stuff that doesn't need me to do very much stuff. It's easy. But if I get a record from a client and a couple of the songs are like, crap, I got to play some notes.
Yeah.
Then I got to be willing to play some notes.
Right.
Because it's the song. It's not the drums.
Right.
It's the song. And drums are going to help get us there.
Right.
Or they're going to hinder us from getting there.
Right.
And I just never want to be the guy that keeps a listener from getting to the place that the artist wanted them to get to.
Right. Yep.
And so whether it's density or sparsity, cool. Who cares?
Right.
The song.
Well said.
I could tell you.
And there is an element of, like, I'm in my 50s. I do not come to the studio an hour early every day to practice my paradiddles.
No.
I don't care. But then, like, a couple times a year I get that record and it's like, shit. I got to play some notes.
I might need to brush up.
Coming early to practice,
Yeah, I might need to brush up a little bit.
And that's fine too. Like, I love that. That's a challenge. Great. So, like, even in that performance, you're going to hear the angst of me, like, just trying to play the notes.
Yeah. And that's going to add a certain
get the listener there.
Yeah, that's going to add a certain thing to the song.
Sure. Right. Like, me being lazy makes the listener have more angst. Perfect.
Yeah. So in the documentary, Taylor Hawkins, rest in peace, from the Foo Fighters, he talked about, when he started playing drums, and it was, he was talking about the guy telling him, play play 4 on the hi-hat, and then play 1 on the snare, or 1 on the bass drum and 3 on the snare. And, he kind of got it, and he said, nah, you're a fucking drummer, dude. And, that's what I was trying to teach James last week.
I'm not a drummer.
I may post the video of James trying to play that when this episode comes out. But one of the things that he mentioned, and I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, was you kind of begin to straight up identify as a drummer.
Yep.
It becomes your kind of coat of armor, is the way he put it. And, Matt, at the top of the show, I mentioned that your path influenced my path. I want you to know that I truly meant that. I would have never, ever in a million years anticipated at the time that drumming would become such a huge part of my life, my upbringing, my identity. It would take so much of my time and my energy. It was the catalyst for my closest friends, some of my best experiences. It got me into a world that I fell in love with. And so thank you for whatever role you played in that. But, I'm interested. So that was my path. Brice, James, and then we'll come back to Matthew. Like, was there something in your formative years? I mean, I know you're still just a young buck there, Brice, at 34 years old.
That's right.
But, was there something that was music that for you was, what helped you identify, find yourself, find your, and I know that has nothing to do with this documentary besides what he said, but I like to open it up to talk about real things. So
yeah. So my mom, my dad, my sister, they're all musicians. They can play the guitar. My sister grew up, she had a drum set.
Mm-hmm.
She plays the clarinet really well. Mm-hmm. And then she plays the bass extraordinary.
Did you know Nikki played the clarinet and was like first chair and everything for the longest time?
Chair.
I was telling her, I'm like, I need to buy you another clarinet and get you back. No, she sold it.
Goodness. But
anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So like they were musicians. And then have you seen the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin?
You're not talking about my sister, are you? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, sorry about that, sister.
But it just starts out and like the whole family's grooving and dancing and everyone's got rhythm except for him. That's kind of what it felt like for me.
Okay.
So like later years in life, I was like more bound and determined to learn something. And I thought, hey, the bass has got less strings. Let's start with that. And then when you come across the $40 drum set on Craigslist, you have to buy it. So
well, I don't know if you have to,
but you don't have to, but
you're gonna buy the drum set.
You're gonna buy it. And I thought it would make me a better bass player, and it probably didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So
but I guess to my question, and you can dodge the answer again.
I forgot what we were talking about.
If you want to, but what did you hang your hat on growing up? What was something that was like you identified as? That's where you found your people. That's where and for me, it was drums and music and playing in a band. And, that's where my friends came from. That's where my social life came from. Yeah. That's where my self-confidence came from. Was there anything like that in your life?
Yeah, that would have been gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I met all my friends and was my social life. And
you did skateboarding for a while, yeah?
Not so much.
No,
more longboarding in college.
Okay, so that was later on a little bit.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I didn't become a person till later on.
I don't know. I saw a YouTube video where you had over 1 million views. Okay, and and you seemed like you were doing all right, man. You had your friends and
Man robbed store with banana.
Yeah. Look it up.
That might exist. I don't know.
James, what about you, man? You grew up in a generation before any of us here.
Before drums even.
Before drums existed. The only drums that existed was a piece of skin stretched across a hollow log.
You would just hear the dinosaurs walking. Boom, boom. boom, boom.
Sound like good beat.
Anyway, these guys are jokesters. You know what I mean. What you guys are talking about? I got you. What you guys talking about to me as I listen to you explain how you feel, how it made you think and act, and I started thinking drums. You guys sound like it was an art form.
Mm-hmm.
So my drums would have been carving wood.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been my drums. You know, it took me away from a lot of weirdness going on in my family, and I couldn't do the whole day carving. And then when I took it down and somebody actually recognized what I carved, then that made me feel good within myself.
Yeah.
You know, and I never sell anything. I usually always give it away because I never seen the reason to sell something that you like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and just hand it off, you know, because they like it, then that makes you feel better, you know, and that's how I did it, you know. And plus playing the congas. I'm going to say that word right every time now. Congas, that also made me feel wonderful inside, you know, playing and spiritual and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. So. Cool. Matt, how about you, man? Was yours drums and music like I'm anticipating it was?
It was. I think I found my slipstream or groove or whatever when I figured out that I was going to do best when I was content to be on the back of the stage,
right.
Or as a producer behind the scenes.
Right.
You know, none of the records I work on now, people don't buy them because I worked on them.
Right.
People buy them because they're awesome, or they don't buy them because they're not.
Right.
That's cool.
So when I kind of turned the dials to the right position so that my joy and my satisfaction came from serving and supporting an artist's vision, that's when I really found like, oh, this is what I do.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
You know,
yep.
And I think, you know, when I was younger, I spent a few years, and you could pull a bunch of people I played for early on. I spent a bunch of years as kind of a selfish drummer where I was just drumming along to their songs. That's not great. Like, I really found contentment when I figured out that the thing for me was to make their thing the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
that's really cool.
That's powerful right there.
And my parents have been saying it forever, and it just took me a minute to get it.
Yeah.
And
we don't want to listen to our parents anyway.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, you know, I've got 3 nearly adult kids, and I've been married for 28 years, and I'm not sure I get it still. But my solidity came when I realized I'm just here to help people get there.
Yep.
Wherever there is, you know?
Right. Yep.
There's no greater
and
gift
I get
than
a ton of
servitude.
joy out of that now.
Yep. What'd you say, James?
There's no greater gift than servitude. The guy in the background, to me, that does the stuff and does the work, that's the strength right there. That's the pillar that's holding up everything else. So I enjoy when you said that, and that was wonderful. So keep it up.
I mean, that and the Congo.
Congas.
The Congo. Welcome to the Congo.
Go to Congo to play the congas.
Wonderful 90s movie about smart gorillas.
Yeah, there you go.
CCC.
CC.
Naomi Watts.
So kind of, you know, coming a little bit toward the end of sort of our time, I think we're running pretty well over, but that's all right. So they talk about the band, I don't remember the guy's name, from the band Royal Blood, who I think is a pretty cool band. I mean, they're pretty good. But one of the things he said, and what I really liked about him in this film, is the sort of levity he brought to it. When he was talking a lot, you know, you've got Chad Smith from Red Hot Chili Peppers and whatever. That's just always going to be a goofball, and you know, and that is what it is. You can have fun with it. That's great. But he was kind of like the guy from Royal Blood. Music doesn't have to be that serious. Let's just go have fun. And to me, that's just so damn important about what we're doing. And there is a time for it to be serious, but even in those serious times, the reason we're doing this, it it's an art. It's to show emotions, or it's to have a good time. Or, you know, I've been in bands that the point was never to be excellent musicians. It was to go and have fun with our friends, and everyone else has fun at the same time, which I think is just as important, if not, you know, on a different level of importance, as, you know, the person who's portraying these huge emotions through their music. So I really appreciated that. They went through the early days, and we didn't really talk about all of the artists and drummers that they mentioned. If you want all that, you can go watch the documentary, which hopefully you did. This show is more about us talking about our takeaways from it. They went through the early days of jazz, how it turned into rock and roll. They talked a little bit about punk, but as incredible as I feel like a lot of these drummers are, and as influential as they have been to the music and that they've involved to, I really feel like we missed out on some of the best drumming to ever happen. Matt, I kind of feel like you may have gotten the same feel from this. You know, do you agree with that? Were we missing some things in this?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm never going to make a documentary because I don't want the responsibility.
Right.
So they're not going to cover everything.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this, like, I think you could probably Google Chad Smith at a Modern Drummer Festival probably 15 years ago for his solo. He just locks into a groove and for like 5 minutes does not deviate from this groove. And it's just a massive middle finger to like the drum clinic drum solo thing.
Yep.
Right. So like, I love that about him. He's a goofball.
Yep.
He plays in a band that I don't take very seriously.
I don't think anybody does.
You know, in this Modern Drummer Festival thing, he was like, no, here's where it's at.
Yeah.
Like, do this.
Yep.
And you'll be fine, you know? So, yeah, you can't include everything. I wish they would have given a little more time to like Abe Laboriel, again, talking about playing with his dad, the bass player.
Yep.
Abe has played on some of the most meaningful recordings in the last 20 years. I wish there would have been a little bit more about like, here's what drums can do to songs, not just here's what drums can do on Christmas morning.
Right.
And I get that they have to have a focus and it's all good.
Yep.
But,
for sure.
You know, I don't love Bonzo from Zeppelin because of the solos. I love him because of Fool in the Rain. I love him because of Black Dog. You know,
the grooves. Yep.
Yeah. Right.
What you brought to that song, not what you brought to that solo.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Kind of like
what
Phil
you brought
Collins
to the dude that
tonight.
doesn't know drums are a thing.
Man,
You know?
I wish you would have heard what James just said.
What did he say?
He said kind of like Phil Collins in the air tonight.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, you know, that ridiculous fill. Everybody can air drum to it.
That was music before the drums. And the drums was the anticipation of the music that's kicking butt again.
Yeah, but why can't I hear that drum fill without thinking of Mike Tyson in The Hangover now? I mean, that's all I
Well, they
hear.
just stole that, but you know.
But then, like,
I still love some
so
Phil Collins today,
that
baby.
drum fill, which is maybe one of the most iconic modern drum fills, right? Everybody, my mom knows that drum fill.
Right.
But then the groove that follows it, like, it's super sparse and it's super bare bones and it's super ballsy because he's only playing the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, right? So like that song's like Love It, Hate It. The drum fill is super low hanging fruit. You've heard it, you know, while you were like shopping for cantaloupe in your grocery store.
Easy now.
But then the groove that happens right after that fill is insanely deep and it's everything the song needs.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And Phil Collins doesn't care what we think.
No, nor should he.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one of the things that I think was missing, and maybe not missing, it didn't need it because this was a rock and roll documentary, but some of the most impressive drumming that I've heard, and maybe Brice, you might be the only one that really connects to me on this one, is some of the metal or metalcore genre of drumming. Just the if you look at Matt Grainer from August Burns Red, or Jordan from As I Lay Dying, or the guy from Mastodon, what's the guy's name from Russian Circles? Some of these like more metal or metalcore or progressive metal rock, whatever you want to call it. That to me, I mean, that's always reached me because that's been my preferred style to listen to. Matt, I'm almost afraid to ask you your opinions on that because I don't even Matt, do you remember you might not know this, but do you know here, this is breaking news. Do you know the reason that I stopped taking drum lessons with you back in the day, and drum lessons at all?
I don't.
I talked to you. So my neighbors started playing in a punk band, and I talked to you about wanting to learn how to play punk rock and metal. And you basically said that you basically said no, that you weren't going to teach me that because there was probably 1,000 fundamentals that I still needed to learn before branching off. But that's all I wanted to do. So I was like, well, maybe I don't need to take lessons anymore. I'll just go do what I want to do. So there's your knowledge there, Matt.
Interesting.
But do you get anything from the blast beats and double bass and the super sharp, maybe even like, what do they call it? Like triggered drums and things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, a couple things. I'm sorry. Probably.
Man, I've been waiting so many years to hear that.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Your life, the rest of your life begins now.
Yep.
I think probably what I was thinking is, if you kind of learn to do it all, I don't care what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But I might not have been mature enough to say it that way.
This was 27 years ago. So
right?
No hard feelings, my friend.
Perfect. Thank you.
I probably should have let you just do things your way, and I would have been better off for it anyway.
No,
so anyway,
it's all good.
Keep going.
And obviously you've been fine. And like I said, I went home and I was watching Refused with my son on the couch.
I kind of chuckled internally when I heard that. I'm like, huh.
No, yeah, I love it.
Yep.
I hate to keep saying this, but it boils down to, if I feel like the song is connecting with me, then I don't care.
Right.
I own all of the Russian Circle stuff on physical media.
So good.
I own all their stuff.
So
because I love it.
Dave something.
Yeah, I'm blanking as well. But like Sleep is a super heavy band, and it's not my cup of tea. But I love working on them on the thing because they all believe in what they're doing.
Yep.
And Ohm is just OM, and their record will probably come out in October or November.
Okay.
I'm super thrilled with what we've done.
Yeah.
It's heavy as all get out. It is not my cup of tea. But I believe it when I listen to it.
Have you listened to Animals as Leaders?
Yeah, totally. Matt Garska.
Yeah.
That's that stuff. Like,
that's some pretty impressive shit too, man.
Yeah. All that. Like, I am not anti-drum.
No.
I'm a 50s guy who I do what I do, but I love it when I love Matt Greiner from August.
Yeah.
Because when I watch him play, he is moving that thing along.
Mm-hmm.
I know where I'm headed because I'm listening to him drum.
Yeah,
right?
There's no way you listen to that and you don't go, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, no, it
doesn't
is
matter
not
if you
for
like
me
the
to
music
say
or not.
What's good or bad.
Yeah,
I want to get to the end of a song because the artist wanted me to get to the end of the song with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to hear a drummer do whatever is necessary or whatever is not necessary to get me to the end of the song with them. So I don't care about how many notes are happening or what the guitars sound like. I want to get to that space with you guys. Right?
Right.
And I'm sorry that I didn't say that to you when you were 14 or whatever.
No, I found that out myself, and it probably was more impactful that way anyway. So you did everything right. Don't worry, sir. So before we get into our final portion of the episode, I'm going to ask everyone the same question and just pretend that somehow you could magically get the abilities to play the drums for a band. Brice, if you could fill in for any band as the drummer, which band would it be?
Me Without You.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Oh, last time I saw him, he had his shirt up over his head and was just drumming away and like chewing through his shirt, and I want to be that guy. You
want to chew through your shirt?
Yeah.
Candy shirt.
Good.
And not miss a beat. That was important.
Good. Brice, I'm a little shocked. That's not what I expected you to say. James, you could fill in as a drummer for any band. Which would it be?
Rush.
Neil Peart. They didn't talk about Neil Peart in this doc, did they?
Nope. Neil Peart and Rush when he played Tom Sawyer.
I'm a little surprised because he's kind of I play with his signature sticks, which is, so now he has a claim to fame.
Now he does.
Yeah. Now he can be proud of the fact that anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm a little surprised they didn't talk about him in this documentary, but Rush, okay.
See, that's what this got going.
Mr. Leffler would be proud of you for saying that one.
That's what. See, this documentary got me digging.
Yeah,
and I got to digging in here, and that's what I thought. Oh man, this Rush, Tom Sawyer. I remember that.
Yeah,
I said, yeah, that's why I play Rush.
Yep,
because I like to get the rush.
Matthew, who would you?
Any band? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, if you could fill in for any band and kind of play along with them.
Yeah, I mean, so there are a couple bands where I always say to I don't go on the road anymore, but I always say to my wife, hey, if these people call, like, I'm out of here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it would be like Sting. And I don't love everything he does.
Yeah.
But I love a lot of what he does.
But that'd be sweet.
And he's got good people around him. There's a band called City and Color. That I love a lot.
Dallas Green, man.
Yeah, right. And so I'd say City in Color or Alexis on Fire.
I was gonna say that would be my choice if I was gonna go. I would much rather play for Alexis on Fire.
Sure. So why don't let's do a duo thing?
Yes.
Let's get Dallas on the road, and I'll do the City stuff, and you do the Alexis stuff.
Okay. Fair. Done.
Perfect. Awesome. And then we can do like a drum duel at the end of the night or whatever.
Yeah, that everyone would leave during.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, after everybody's gone.
Everyone's like, we listened to a documentary episode where these guys talked about not being in the front of the stage, and now they're trying to be rock stars. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, put a gun to my head, probably City in Color.
Okay, I love that.
If you haven't heard his new record or that new record.
Yeah.
Probably 6 months ago.
It
is kind of all the things I need a record to be.
I'm going to check that out now.
Yeah.
Mine would be Russian Circles. I saw them live a few times, and they are huge live. Whatever they do, they are just, you are an instrumental band that has never once needed a vocalist to make your songs complete. There's just, I used to joke with my Navy buddies because I would listen to Russian Circles in like our shop, and I'd be like, this is what the end of the world should sound like. This like epic sound that makes you feel all these feelings and you don't know why. That's what I want. That to me is like, it's simple enough, but it's so technical at the same time. Russian Circles, man. Yep. It's good shit.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Usually we talk about how we feel after the credits roll. We'll go around. One or two words. Brice, how'd you feel, man?
Good.
James?
Yeah, I felt good. I just wish they would have went into one small detail real quick.
Do it.
And that would be like, say, how drums even begin.
You wanted some history.
Some history.
Okay.
That's what I would like to start off with and then go into the drums.
Yep. I felt like I never realized how hard Ringo hit the drums. So I didn't go into this, but I appreciate someone who really plays their drums. When somebody like if you've ever watched me play, you probably know that I go way too hard, like to the point where it's like it's probably taking away from the way the drums should sound and all that, because I have a hard time controlling that part of myself. But I like when you, and that's one thing I liked, that I like about Dave from Russian Circles is he really whips the shit out of his drums, but it sounds so good when he does it. So, that was just something that I wanted to plug in there. But Matt, how about you, man? How'd you feel after the credits rolled? You kind of mentioned it earlier. You were like,
No, yeah, fine. I mean, it was 2 hours that I don't feel like I need to invoice them for. And on the Ringo thing, like, I love the footage they chose to use of him.
Yep.
Was really visceral, and it kind of played into the theme of what I thought the doc was. Like he was leaning in and doing emo shit on the drums.
For sure.
Like he was washing his ride, and that thing was moving. And so I loved that. I'm not the hugest. I love Charlie Watts.
Yep.
I don't love the Stones.
Yep.
I love the Beatles. I don't love Ringo.
Yep.
But that footage of him where he's just, man, that ride is moving. Like that's pretty hard to ignore.
For sure. And you've got some of the biggest names in, whether it's metal or whatever. We just did a documentary about Anvil, an old metal band, and they're still currently playing, which is insane. But you look at like the Lars Ulrich whatever. I've always thought that Lars Ulrich was quite overrated, and maybe some of their older stuff was a little more impressive, but when I watched Ringo, and Ringo was in sort of one of the same feel for me, where I'm going, the Beatles are fine. I mean, they were a little before my time where I really didn't maybe appreciate them the way that I should have when I was growing up and everything. But, to me, it was like, as a punk kid going, the drums suck, But then I watched that and I go, you could have put him behind any punk band playing like that, at least the footage, like you said, that they showed, and he'd have done fine in Metallica, honestly. Just put another kick drum up there and he'd have been fine.
Sure.
But anyway, I'm in agreement with all of you about all those feelings, and every feeling is valid, and you guys are all great. All right, we ready to do ratings, everybody? All right, so we've come to the time where we need to rate this documentary with an official documentary rating. Each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, with 1 being as bad as an offbeat fill and 10 being as good as all that double bass. The item that is used for scoring changes each week, depending on the content of the documentary. This week, we chose Ghost Notes as our rating item. So let's start with Matt. Okay, hold on. Before you answer that, before the show, we decided that we are going to do 2 different ratings. Okay, 1 for the drummers only and 1 for all 4 of us. All right, we're going to rate the documentary like we normally do, and then Matt and I are going to rate the drumming that we saw in the documentary. All right, so first, we're just going to go around and talk about the documentary itself, okay? Matt, how many ghost notes are you giving this documentary?
As a film, I'm going to give it like somewhere between 7 and 8.
So 7?
Yeah, it sounded fine. It looked good. I was glad when Ross Garfield was hitting drums that you could kind of hear what they actually sounded like in the room. it was all good.
Awesome. All right. 7
And I
ghost
love
notes.
the inclusion of all of the women drummers.
Agreed. Brice, how many ghost notes, sir?
7 ghost notes.
7 ghost notes. Why?
It was fun. And
James, how many ghosts?
it was a fun doc and got me hyped about drummers. So
Yeah.
That was fun. 7.
Cool. James?
I gave it a 7 also.
Awesome.
Yeah.
7s all around so far.
7s all around.
Anything to say about that or just?
I gave it a 7 because I did the research inside and I started to listen to drummers and learn that there's a lot more to it than just beating on drums. There's some stuff in it, emotions and feelings and everything is all in it, you know. So
Was
I really
it
like it?
Was it interesting to you guys to hear kind of drummers' take on this with Matt and I talking about this sort of, specifically Matt with his, was that stuff that you hadn't thought about before in regard to drums?
I didn't think of anything that Matthew said because he's smart.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that went over your head.
Right. It didn't go over my head or anything like that, you know. And nothing go over the king's head, you know what I mean? But anyway, the thing is, I kind of he said a lot of things that I agree with because every time you said something, I kept putting it in an artist point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So when I kept putting it in an artist point of view, it sounded a lot better to me than putting it in a drummer's point of view.
Yep.
So
you can relate to it easier.
Yeah, I can relate to it better like that. So it sounded great.
Cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks. I gave it a 7 as well. So with that, after averaging everybody's scores, the official Talkumentary rating for Count Me In is 7 ghost notes. All right, Matt, talk to me about your rating for the drums in this and speak to why you give it this rating.
Sure. So like for drum rating, I probably give it a solid 3 to 4.
Okay.
And for all the reasons we talked about, like I love Christmas morning. I love that day when my dad pulled the blanket off his drum set.
Mm-hmm.
But that was that was like a million miles ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the documentary kind of camped there. And that's awesome. And we can all get goosebumps, but all the goosebumps always go away. And then you got to figure out what to do. And I would have loved for the like, hey, what happens the day after the goosebumps have gone away?
Yeah.
What happened the day after my dad pulled the blanket off the drums?
Yep.
What happened when I almost got fired for an artist because they thought I was ruining their songs?
Right.
What am I supposed to do with that? You know, all that stuff. So,
yeah,
that's me being like super nerdy pocket protector, calculator in my pocket kind of vibe. So
right.
Whatever.
Right. You know, and to speak on that, I don't remember who it was, but they showed it maybe was Sam Maloney, who had got her drums, and they did show some footage, like when they were doing all the vintage kind of feel footage of people getting their first drum set and hugging it, and you know, they showed her, I think it was her in the in her room, sort of playing a pretty, you know, rudimentary little or little groove. And I really liked that they showed that because first of all, that's like one of the first beats that every drummer learns, like and you know, which is great, but I think from the minute you get those first drums and like just to kind of co-sign what you've been saying to when you actually feel like you get it and are starting to actually progress, there is some real frustration, some real emotion, some real desire to give up, some you know, a lot of difficult emotions. You know, you don't want to get up and practice because you're not getting it, you know, and eventually it clicks. And then that's when, to me, that's when the real fun came in. When it first, when, you know, I can remember when I first figured out like a beat where I was doing like I don't even remember what it was, but where I really felt my limbs sort of disconnect from each other, where I'm like, holy crap, this beat right here will build off of, I can basically build everything off of that for the rest of playing the drums because my Matt, I'm struggling with my terminology here, but basically my limbs have I've learned how to disassociate them with each other.
Yeah.
And that was a huge moment for me. And that's when drumming really got fun. And even though I kept learning, it was still, it wasn't so much of a chore anymore.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. And they never really touched on that piece. Like if you were to watch that documentary, you would almost think that everyone in that doc was born with an innate ability to play the drums. They got their first drum set, they sat down and started kicking ass. Well, I promise you that wasn't the case for any of them. And even Taylor Hawkins was talking about how he, sat down and played that beat immediately, and like, you're a fucking drummer, dude. Like, well, not everyone can do that. I mean, James, you sat down and tried to do that, and it's a struggle.
It is.
To get your hands to not want to do what they've been doing forever, that can be a struggle. So to not speak to any of that there's a lot of fucking work that goes into getting there. And for someone like myself, I feel like, I don't come from a family of musicians or drummers or anything like that. So I don't feel like I really had anything innate. It was me looking at the drums saying, that's cool. I want to be a part of that, and putting in some work. I had to work toward that. And maybe I had to work harder than some did. Maybe I didn't work hard enough. Others, maybe it comes a little bit easier too. And I'm sure that's the case, but everyone who does it, everyone in that documentary and everyone who wasn't featured in that has had to work insanely hard to get there, unless you're some kind of prodigy that just knows how to do it. But I have never met one. So.
Sure. And in the movie's defense, like, you never see a car commercial where it shows you taking it in for an oil change.
Yeah.
or giving it a tune up or whatever, right? Like, it's the shiny, fast, hugging the road thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the doc was.
Yep.
And cool. Man, drums are that. Of course you got to put some time in.
Mm-hmm.
You got to change the oil. But man, if like a few people caught the bug and we start to hear some meaningful stuff from them in 20 years or 10 years or whatever.
Yep.
Cool. I'm
Absolutely.
in. I look forward to that.
For sure. Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's our show, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Matthew, sorry, man. I told Matt, God dang. I told Matthew early on when
it's all good, Jeffrey.
Hey, that's fine. I met him as Matt, so it's really hard for me to break that habit. So Matthew, I can't tell you how much fun it's been, and a pleasure to get to hang out with you again, even over FaceTime here and talk drums. It's been a really long time, man. I'm glad you're doing well. I hope your family's doing well. Yeah, man, it was really good having you on.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. I'm good. It's great to see you. Proud of you.
Thanks,
glad you're doing
man.
your thing.
Made me
Nice
choked up a little. Do you have anything you want to plug or anything before we talk about next week's episode? Anything going on that you're excited about?
Like, you like the conga drums?
The Congo.
Ohm's new record?
Yeah, I mean, be looking out for that. I'm really excited for that to come out. It'll be a minute, but probably October, November. I'm really bad at all of the stuff, but my Instagram is Matthew Drummer.
Matthew
Hit that.
Drummer.
And it's pictures of like my kids and steaks on the grill and snare drums that I buy.
Yep.
Right on.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, man. It's been awesome. James and Brice, always a good time.
All right.
let's talk about next week's episode. Next week, we're going to submit ourselves to the dark underworld of a consensual fright experience in a documentary known as The Blackout Experiments. In this documentary, a group of people discover this ultra scary psychosexual horror experience and develop an obsession with it that starts to blur the line between reality and paranoid fantasy. So a real weird one coming up for next week, listeners. Have any of you, Matt, have you ever heard of or seen the Blackout Experiments? Brice, James?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, I've actually already watched this, and James, I know you did as well. So I know this is a weird one. We have a special guest next week that will be joining us. A couple special guests actually. So be on the lookout for that. You can stream it on Tubi. It's called The Blackout Experiments. Check it out. So join us as we knock 3 times and wait to see what kind of horrors are in store for us, one documentary at a time. Go out, rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming service, and let us know what you think of our show. If you want to connect to the Talkumentary crew, look for @Talkumentary Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or you can shoot us an email at info.talkumentary@gmail.com. On behalf of Matthew Tobias, King James, Mr. Brice, DJ in the booth, and the entire Talkumentary family, I'm your host, Jeff Kolaski. I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you keep your minds open and be kind to each other.
Boots and cats.
Boots and pants and bye, everyone. Bye. Bye, James. Bye, Matthew.
See ya.
Boom, 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 boom. Something like that. I don't know.
Something like that.
Something like that. Who does that?